Welcome back to Veterans Forum, a program by veterans, about veterans, for veterans and their families. I'm your co-host Bob West with Ray Chattery and Jerry Devlin. Our goal is to provide you with important information about legislation, benefits, support, and activities important to you and your family by interviewing important leaders in our community. Jerry, who do we have with us today?
Really very honored tonight, Bob, to have with us T.C. Williams, the Department Commander for the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Like many of our viewers, he's a native of Washington and grew up in Montgomery County in the Four Corners area. Served in the United States Navy with some distinction from 1960 to 65, and then went like Bob West to the U.S. Air Force to get tired of hard work and joined the Air Force. And then was 20 years as an air traffic controller. And he joined the VFW, I think, in 1994, and basically, without going through his very distinguished career in the VFW, pretty much went through all the chairs all the way, and we're really happy to have T.C. Williams with us tonight.
Welcome, Commander Williams.
Thank you.
Well, you know, being the post commander, it's always good to have our department commander here.
Right.
And he can kind of straighten us out on some of the stuff we're doing. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the department, VFW, and some of the things that are happening this year?
Well, our biggest focus, of course, is Veteran Service Office that we run out of Baltimore, and that takes up quite a bit of our budget. Special project is the Special Operations Warrior Foundation, which provides higher education to dependent children of deceased special operators. And in that line, we're having a golf tournament in April up at Ruggles Golf Course up by Aberdeen Proving Grounds. That's open to anybody that wants to sign up a four-man team. And if you don't want to do that, you can buy a hole sponsor, or you can donate golf stuff. We don't care. We'll take what we can get. The National Commanders and President's Program is mental health, and along that line, October 8th, he designated that day to do something for mental health, and along that line, the people in the Department of Maryland have had a lot of events and functions to support that effort, including a 12-hour walk over at Fort Meade. There was a seniors event up in Timonium. There was a Vietnam veterans event up in Timonium, and such as that. And everybody's doing fundraisers here and there. And the other big item is that the men's auxiliary, as we know it, will cease to exist the 30th, 31st of December. And those members can join the auxiliary, but they have to be vetted again. If they don't have an auxiliary at their post, they're free to start their own. That's pretty much it.
One of the programs that you initiated this year concerned life membership for some members who have been a member for at least 2 years or...
Right, and what that was an effort to get members in good standing that have been in good standing for 2 years to apply for life membership, and at what their age level required as dues, they would only have to pay half. The department would pay the other half. And to date, we have done 90, I believe it is, transfer overs to life, and I think we've spent about $13,000 on that program.
I know our post, we had one individual, a new individual, who gave us a check for life membership, and we were able to convert that into the 50-50 program for her as a new person. And then we also had someone who had been a member for a few years and liked that idea about the 50-50 split.
Well, we figure, you know, the posts give to the department, it's time to give, for the department to give a little something back. And where these funds come from, if a post closes and there's real estate involved, it goes back to the department. The department has to sell it, and then they just put the money in a market account and we felt that that account was getting a little too big. So we want this buyback program is going to run for 3 years. I already have the next 2 administrations have agreed to it. And the question was raised because we initially allocated $50,000. Somebody said, well, what if that runs out? I said, then we go back and bring it to you folks at the Council of Administration and ask for more.
Well, that's a good idea, because this is the first time you hear about giving back. Usually it's going up the chain, and you kind of wonder sometimes about coming down. And the idea of a life membership, just like the DAV has one, it's kind of automatic. That's a real good idea.
Well, the premise is that you make more money in dues rebates from national on a life member than you would make on that amount of money if you left it in the bank at today's interest rates. So the post benefits and the department benefits and the individual benefits by saving half of the rate.
Yeah, it's a multi-win for everybody. Those are the kinds of things you're kind of looking for. So one of the things that we always talk about, of course, is membership. So how's membership going?
It's, to my satisfaction, not well. Mm-hmm. But of course, I set high standards, and I wanted to be 85% at the end of October, and it looks like we will just make it tomorrow. We're at 84.97%. Mm-hmm. We got 20+ thousand members, and we're at 17,000 plus have paid their dues. Part of this problem is the subscription dues program. Instead of everybody paying their dues by the end of December, you got them spread out through the year. So you're steadily going after people, but you have to be careful, because if you're an annual member and you pay your dues in February, you will have already gotten 3 letters from National. Now, we don't want to send them another letter. We're going to have to wait till the end of January, something like that, because people are getting upset and getting all these letters saying your dues are going to be past due, when in fact they're not. I am not a fan of subscription dues. I think it increases the workload that you have to do.
So you'd like the DAV approach?
Single.
Everybody's a life member.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to have everybody a life member, but that's not going to happen.
When did we start that in the DAV? We got a while ago, a long time ago.
Yeah, to say what they do is when you sign up, you can sign up for $40, and you have 3 years to pay off your life membership. And you can also do it with a credit card and let them. They can take it out every month, and then you're a part life member, and then you become a full life member. And anybody over 80 gets a free life membership. And as I say, that's for some reason, like I said, down the line at one time, I hope it's not anymore, that the VFW, American Legion, they didn't want life members at that time. But I think they're finding it's very expensive to run an annual program. It's very expensive.
Yeah, and at the post level, we don't like that process either. It was so much easier because you knew who was now you don't even. It's difficult knowing whose membership is up and whose isn't.
You got to keep looking at the rosters, and they carry unpaid members for a number of years. I think it's 4 or 5 years since they paid. They'll still show up on your roster. Last paid 5 years ago, and they want you to go knocking on doors. Well, knocking on doors is a fine thing, but chances are the addresses you have are not correct.
Right.
Or a lot of people are out of state that are part of members of your post because they've moved to Florida or whatever.
Well, we used to get a lot of military in Maryland because we were recruiting out of BWI Airport when the folks were coming and going from Southwest Asia, either coming back on their R&Rs or going over or coming back. And we were getting a lot of members out of there, and I've had entire companies join from the Army, and then they deploy, and then when they come back, everybody's spread into the 4 corners, and you don't know where they went.
And the military won't help us on, for example, on recent discharges. That would be a wonderful thing.
Well, yeah, and the other good thing would be, and I don't know if they've changed this yet, but you always had to opt into the VA when you when you left the service.
Well, now the VA has started a program where they have representatives at certain bases, certain of the big bases like such as Fort Bragg and like that, which includes its Joint Base Bragg Pope, you know, and they have them up in Washington. There's several of them. If you look at the National VFW site, you'll be able to see where they are. And these people are helping folks initiate claims. We tried to recruit down at Walter Reed, formerly Bethesda Naval, and they wouldn't let us. But they let the Fleet Reserve recruit down there. Well, the president of the Fleet Reserve is also my chief of staff, and he's been known to slide out an application form down there. But that's the problems you run into. We were going to start a post down at Walter Reed, and they said they didn't have any room for them. We said it just requires a meeting room one night a month, you know, after 7 o'clock. And surely in that facility you can find a room with a table and some chairs, but they didn't want to participate. And I don't know if that's just from the commander of the facility down, or it's coming from higher up. I know you take your Patriots Pen Voice of Democracy programs, which you guys are familiar with. We went to the school board in Montgomery County and said, here's the brochures. We'd like to introduce these programs into your schools. We'll take care of getting there. And Assistant Superintendent of Schools said, well, the word patriot may offend somebody, so you can't run that program. And about fell over, you know. So we ended up going to private schools and homeschool people and like that. But that's the kind of resistance you run into out there. And I'm sure you've met some in different areas also.
Yeah, we have that problem. The other issue that with the VA is, you know, when we were 22 or 23 when we got out of the service the first time, you know, we couldn't get off the base usually fast enough to get back home or wherever we were going. And it's not until 30 or 40 years later that you remember, you know, you have an ache or a pain that's probably related to something you did in the service, and now you're trying to find your DD-214 and all this other kind of stuff. So one of the things I always would hope to see is when you were part of your discharge out processing would be to stop at the VA desk, and they immediately sign you up for the VA, so you have a VA number so that 30 or 40 years later they can find you.
Well, there's like tetanus, the ringing in the ears. They've denied me 3 times on that because it's not in my military record. We didn't even know what it was back then. You know, you're sitting under artillery pieces that are firing down range, and aircraft noise and all that kind of stuff. Couldn't wear ear protection because you couldn't hear the airplanes when you're trying to control traffic. But it's not in your medical record. So I encourage people to make sure that they get a complete copy of their medical records prior to discharge, to take that along with them.
Yeah, and some people, some young people will adhere to that, and of course most won't, which is always you know, the problem. Most of the service organizations do have some sort of service officer, and I know the VFW participates quite a bit in the service officer program, usually picking up, if I recall, from month to month, usually a few $1 million in benefits to
yeah, they do a great
veterans.
job in getting benefits. Not every state has a service, VFW service office. The bylaws require that you have a service officer. Now, our service office right now has 130-some claims out of Virginia. They've got one out of China, several out of Florida, North Carolina. And what happens is the VA gets these claims in, and they fire them out via computer to different offices to spread the workload around, but they're not reimbursing or the dedicated monies that they give to operate the office are not coming down the pipe. And that's a result of the dues increase about 2 years ago, where dues went up $10 a head. Nobody's seen any of that money yet at the department level.
Now, every year the commander has a special project, and yours is the Special Operation Warrior Project.
Yes,
Is right?
Special Operations Warrior Foundation.
Can you tell us a little bit more about it, because it was new until I heard from you?
Basically what that is, it's set up to provide secondary education to dependent children of deceased special operators. They have, what do they have, 14 employees? Or no, they have 4 employees, 14, yeah, 14. And they operate out of, their headquarters is in Tampa, right down there near, by McDill. And what they do is in middle school, they identify the kids and see what they want to do so that they have counselors that guide them through the process. Starts off very lightly in middle school. Then when they get into high school, the counselors are making sure they're taking the right courses to do what they want to do. And then when they want to go to college, they say, I want to go to this college. They make sure that they're academically fit for that school. And then they get a full ride scholarship. They're given a computer and a printer and a small monthly stipend. I don't know the amount. And the only requirement is that they have to give the counselor their password so that they can monitor their grades. If a dependent child doesn't want to go to a 4-year school, let's say he wants to be a truck driver or a beautician, they'll send him to the appropriate school to get that training.
Now, when you talk about the dependents, you're talking about service members who died while on active duty?
Or training.
Or training, so it could be...
Special operators, that's be your special forces, your SEALs, your combat controllers, and your force recon, expeditionary force people. The overhead for this organization is 4.5%, which is very good. It's the chief executive is a retired Navy admiral that came out of Special Ops Command.
So this is a specifically designed program for those service members who were in special operations that we always see. You know, those guys are like the pointy end. You can't get any more pointier than those guys as far as the spear is concerned. And it would be for their children to take advantage of this program. And you can find out more about this program by Googling it, or you can call the Department of Maryland, and I'm sure they can give you some more information.
Most of the posts have information.
And that's true.
They gave us brochures and donation forms and all that kind of stuff, and they were spread out throughout the department.
And our post was members decided to make a contribution to the commander's special project, and we were very happy to do it because of the recipients of this type of veteran support. You also mentioned that the National Commander's project is mental health.
Correct.
Is that associated with PTSD or something like that?
All aspects of mental health in an effort to prevent suicide. Right now there's roughly 20 to 25 veterans a day committing suicide. And what this is, they've teamed up with an organization called Give an Hour, which will train people and use them as counselors or whatever. Somebody in your area, let's say you're trained, somebody in your area is thinking about committing suicide, they might put them to you to have you talk to them as a mentor type thing. And also to ask the questions that people don't ask. You know, when's the last time you asked somebody, are you thinking about committing suicide? They don't ask that question as a rule. It teaches you to learn the 5 signs of mental illness, things like that. And it's a good program. They know that they have saved at least one. I just came from the Eastern States Conference 2 weekends ago, and the commander reiterated a story about one that was saved by talking to one of the people from Give an Hour.
Well, one of the programs that Jerry's familiar with is our Veterans Court program, which takes into effect, you know, people's veterans issues that may get into some problems with the court, whether it be domestic or something else.
Yeah, we had an individual from the Attorney General's office came and spoke at C of A, Council of Administration, meeting about, I think it was, he was from, they got it into Anne Arundel County, and they're working on getting it other places.
Do we have it here in Prince George's County yet?
Sure.
Okay.
It's in operation.
Yeah, Prince George's County been going for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And Baltimore County, I think, in
I think, yeah, you know, Chief, the Administrative Judge Sheila Tillison Adams, from the very beginning, has been a big booster. There was fairly strong not fairly strong, but significant opposition from judges on the establishing another specialty court. And I think now we're realizing the value. And one of the things that's valuable in the court system is career military. If they got the mental treatment that they should have gotten in the military, it was career destroying. So people tended to self-treat and ignore these things. So you have awful problems sometimes when you get out of the military. You know, among you know, not so much among the one enlistment people, but among the career people.
Mm-hmm. And also, we're going to be coming up on a new legislative year pretty soon. Is there any legislation that you can think of, Jerry, that...
It hasn't, the bills haven't been pre-filed yet.
Okay, and I don't think we have anything lingering from the past except trying to get more...
The pension.
The pension always comes up, you know, if we can get another $5,000 or...
Yeah.
What, you know, if that happens.
I don't know how Ehrlich started out kind of strong pro-veteran, and then seemed to have lost interest, and Martin O'Malley seemed to have no interest in it. Didn't get, you know, we have problems. You know, Ray runs every year a reception of veterans for the Joint Veterans Committee, and it's in one of the halls, usually in the State House. And we've had 2 successive years where 2 governors, one a Democrat and one a Republican, were in the corridor and didn't come into our reception.
Yeah, that's one of the
and
problems.
And then we have the special problems that when I was in the legislature, 75% of the male members of the House and Senate were veterans, and now it's an insignificant number. You know?
Less than 20%.
Oh, it's far less than that. Yeah. You're beginning now to elect both at the local level and Congress veterans of the Middle East wars, and I think that's a good sign. But you know, things that we all know instinctively, when you go down on Annapolis, you have to tell people. I mean, they don't think in veterans terms. Mm-hmm. And of course, you know, the problem in America is that we were a generation that, for the most part, the best you could do with military was you could pick your own service, maybe. But more or less, everybody had to serve. I say not everybody, but you know, people found their way out. Mm-hmm. But basically, you know, when I was first in politics, if you weren't a veteran, you had a lot of explaining to do, why, particularly after World War II. You know,
Mm-hmm.
It's we're one of the other VFW programs is student veterans, trying to talk to them. We've got 13 colleges in the state of Maryland have student veteran organizations, and I have tasked people to attempt to make inroads with them, and not to invite them over for a beer, but what kind of civil projects do you have going? Can we help you with that? Or if we got something going, would you all like to help us with that? Because the student veteran is going to be, they're all Middle East war vets, and that's going to be the future of this organization.
Right here, Bowie State has one of those organizations, and I've been over to talk to them.
Of course, the GI Bill is so much better than the Korean and Vietnam Bill.
Oh, absolutely.
World War II bill was a great bill. You could, if you were a disabled veteran under the World War II GI Bill, you could stay in school. If you could convince the VA that you wanted to be an attorney and a veterinarian, you could stay in school. And I was an undergraduate in the 50s, and there still were, drinking in Harvard Square, there still were disabled veterans who were sort of perennial students at Harvard. And, you know, so it was really it's the greatest piece of legislation Congress ever passed. Mm-hmm. 600,000 engineers alone were trained by the World War II GI Bill.
But it was one of those things where it was a helping hand.
Yeah.
you know, as opposed to a handout, which,
Yeah.
which
You
people
know,
don't
an
approve.
interesting bit of history, and as a state commander, past department commander of the DAV opposed in 1944 the GI Bill. The American Legion were the people who pushed it. The DAV's position was that education benefits would take money away from disabled veterans. You know, that's a little bit of veterans history. But, you know.
Speaking about this post 911, my grandson just bought a home, and the benefits that he got was no money down, and they're paying this and they're paying that, and he got a beautiful home. We spent the night there for Thanksgiving, and I say it just really, he just couldn't say.
Well, we live here in Bowie, and when we moved in the 60s, everybody had FHA or VA loans.
Yeah, that would be typical. We're trying to focus a bit on women veterans to get them more involved in our programs and so forth. And we're pretty fortunate because we have 3 or 4 active duty women who are members
That's one of your
post.
new life members, isn't it?
One of them, yes. So, as a matter of fact, we're working on.
Locally? Is it one of yours?
Well, she's not the life member,
Oh.
but we had a new young lady who signed up, and she signed up as a new life member, and her husband's eligible, and we're trying to get him involved in
They
our
have
post too.
the She Serves program, which specifically addresses women's issues. The VA is including more medical programs for females because there's a lot more of them now, so they can get the specialized service that they need. And we're glad to have them. In fact, the state junior vice is a female. So in 2 years, she'll be Madam Commander.
And that's what's going to happen to us, hopefully next year. As
It's going to happen to the Marine Corps League, too. The senior vice is a woman.
our post, Megan will come in as our post commander
Right.
next year. So, we're looking forward to more young people and, of course, young women to
It's
join the
depressing
program.
we just can't get the young people in. Last week we had our Marine Corps anniversary ball, and the cake is cut by the youngest and oldest Marine. The oldest Marine was predictably in the middle 80s, but the youngest Marine was, what, 54 or 56?
Right.
So,
At our post, right.
yeah.
Well, it's kind of hard to believe, but we're through with our 30 minutes, and I want to thank our guest, Commander T.C. Williams. He's the Department Commander for the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States. And we want to thank you for watching, but it's important for you to get involved. Please stop by the American Legion on Laurel Bowie Road or the DAV on Route 197 and find out about the benefits, programs, and even upcoming legislation that's important to you and your family. And we ask family members to stop by if your spouse happens to be serving outside the state or the country, and find out about the benefits and support that the local programs can provide. So we ask you to stop by, find out what's happening, and I want to thank you once again for watching Veterans Forum.